god who walked away. In the thin air of the Andes, where mountains rise like sleeping giants and lakes mirror the sky, there's a story the Inca world never forgot. A story about a god who didn't just rule the heavens, he built them. They say he shaped the world from darkness. He set the sun into motion. He breathed life into people. And then, after all of that, he didn't demand temples or endless praise. He walked away. Not vanishing in a flash of lightning, but leaving like a traveler, step by step, toward the edge of the world. Who was Viracocha? Why do so many stories describe him not as a distant ruler, but as a wandering teacher in disguise? And why does his legend feel like a warning that the divine might be closer than we think? Today, we're stepping into one of the greatest mysteries of Inca mythology, Viracocha, the creator, the judge, and the god who walked into the horizon. The Inca cosmos in 90 seconds. To understand Viracocha, we have to understand the world he belonged to, because the Inca didn't see reality as ordinary. For them, the Andes weren't just mountains, they were living powers. Great peaks were apis, sacred mountain spirits, watchers and protectors. Rivers, stones, caves, and springs could be huacas, holy places where the world felt thin, like the divine was pressing close. Above all of this was the Inca sense of balance, the belief that the universe had an order and human life had to stay aligned with it. And here's the key: the Inca didn't worship only one god. Their spiritual world was layered: local spirits, ancestral forces, and major state gods. Most people know Inti, the sun god, because the Inca Empire built so much around the sun. But Viracocha is different. Viracocha isn't simply the god of one thing. Viracocha is the one who makes the whole stage before anyone else steps onto it. Who is Viracocha? Names, roles, and confusions. So who is Viracocha? In many Andean traditions, Viracocha is the prime creator, the force that brings structure out of chaos. A being tied to origins, to water, to sky, to the moment reality becomes real. Depending on the version, he's described with different titles, sometimes as a great lord, sometimes as a powerful teacher, sometimes almost like a cosmic architect. And you might hear the name connected to Lake Titicaca, that massive high-altitude lake on the border of modern Peru and Bolivia. In several traditions, it's one of the most important starting points, a place where creation begins. Now, a quick warning, because Viracocha gets tangled in modern retellings. You may have heard the name mixed with Kon-Tiki, or simplified into one single, neat storyline. But Andean myths weren't always neat. They traveled orally, shifting across regions, shaped by politics, geography, and the people telling them. So instead of forcing one official version, we'll follow the core themes that keep returning. Viracocha as creator, Viracocha as judge, Viracocha as wanderer, and Viracocha as the god who leaves. Creation story, making the world and the sun. Imagine the beginning, before the Inca, before cities, before even light. Some stories say there was only darkness. A silence so complete it feels impossible to picture. And then, Viracocha, not as a warrior, not as a king on a throne, but as a maker. He forms the world, shaping land and sky, separating the layers of reality like someone building a home from raw stone. And creation in these stories isn't just making stuff, it's making order. Because in the Andes, order means survival. Seasons matter. Water matters. The movement of the sun matters. If the world is unstable, life collapses. So Viracocha sets things into place. He initiates the cycle of time. And in many versions, he creates the heavenly lights, the sun, the moon, the stars, as if switching on the universe. It's a powerful idea. The sun isn't just a burning ball in the sky. It's part of a deliberate system, something chosen, positioned, and given purpose. And once the world is built, it needs people. The first humans, the flood, and the second try. In many versions, Viracocha creates humans early on. sometimes from stone, sometimes from earth, sometimes through an act of will that isn't fully explained. But then comes the twist. The first beings aren't always what the Creator hoped for. Some stories speak of humans who become arrogant, violent, or chaotic. In other tellings, there are giants, creatures too wild, too destructive, too out of balance. And Viracocha responds with something mythologies around the world recognize instantly: a reset, a flood, a sweeping cleansing of the world. Think about what that symbolizes. Water washing away disorder, returning the world to a blank state. Then Viracocha creates again, rebuilding humanity, placing people across the land. And this part matters. In some traditions, Viracocha doesn't just make humans, he assigns them. He sends different peoples to different places, like the world is being organized into a living map. It's a myth that explains diversity, why different communities exist, why each has its own land, its own identity. But it also carries a warning. Creation can be undone. Order can be lost. And if humans forget balance, the world can be corrected. Now we're going to shift, because Viracocha doesn't stay up in the sky. He comes down. And that's where the story becomes personal. Viracocha, the wanderer in disguise. Here's one of the most haunting ideas in all of Andean mythology. Viracocha doesn't always appear as a blazing god. Sometimes, he appears as a traveler. In some legends, he walks through the Andes like an old man, dressed simply, moving from village to village. And the people he meets don't always recognize him. This is where the myth hits hard, because it turns into a test of character. A stranger arrives. Maybe he asks for food. Maybe he asks for shelter. Maybe he offers teachings, lessons about how to live in balance. And people respond in different ways. Some show kindness and respect, and they're blessed. Others mock him, reject him, or treat him as nothing. And then, only after the choice is made, does the truth reveal itself. The traveler isn't just a traveler. He's the creator. It's a mythic message that doesn't need modern language to feel modern. How you treat the powerless might be how you treat the divine. And in some versions, those who act with cruelty face punishment. Not random, but symbolic. Because Viracocha isn't just creating the world, he's enforcing the rules that keep it from collapsing back into chaos. How empires use myths. Now we zoom out, because the Inca weren't just storytellers, they were empire builders. The Inca Empire expanded across massive territory, absorbing countless peoples with their own sacred places and local gods. And instead of erasing every belief, the Inca often did something smarter. They integrated them. They organized a spiritual system where local traditions could still exist, while the state promoted major gods that supported imperial identity. That's part of why you can find different levels of Viracocha in different stories. In some places, he feels like the supreme creator above all. In others, he feels like one powerful force among many. And even the name carried political power. One of the Inca rulers was called Viracocha Inca, which tells you something. To carry that name was to claim legitimacy. To say, my rule is connected to the creator. Myth wasn't just a story. It was a foundation stone of authority. Myth map, following Viracocha across the Andes. If Viracocha is a wandering god, then the Andes become his road. Many stories root his beginning near Lake Titicaca, one of the most sacred bodies of water in the region, high, vast, and ancient. From there, the myths describe movement, through highlands, across settlements, into places where people lived close to stone and sky. And what makes this important isn't just geography, it's meaning. Because in the Andes, landscapes aren't backgrounds, they're characters. A mountain isn't only a mountain. A lake isn't only water. These are sacred presences, witnesses to creation. So when Viracocha travels, he's not wandering through empty nature. He's moving through a living sacred world, correcting it, teaching it, setting it into order. And that journey gives the myth a different feeling. Viracocha isn't distant. He's close enough to walk your roads. the departure, walking to the edge of the world. And then we reach the ending, the part that makes Viracocha unforgettable. After creation, after the flood, after the teachings and the tests, Viracocha leaves. In many tellings, he walks toward the west, toward the coast, toward the horizon, toward the place where land ends and the unknown begins. And he doesn't leave like a conqueror. He leaves like someone who has finished a task. That's eerie, isn't it? Because we expect gods to stay. We expect them to demand worship, to remain in their temples. But Viracocha is the creator who doesn't cling to his creation. So what does that mean? One interpretation is simple. The world is set into motion, and now humans are responsible for maintaining balance. Another is more emotional. The creator is not gone, just distant, like a teacher who steps back so the student can grow. And there's also a warning woven into the silence he leaves behind. If order was built once, it can be broken again. How we know this story, the filter of history. Here's something important to remember. A lot of what we know about Viracocha comes from stories written down after Spanish contact, recorded by chroniclers, priests, and writers trying to describe Andean beliefs through their own worldview. That doesn't make the stories worthless. Far from it. They're priceless windows into a living tradition. But it does mean we should treat them carefully. Because these myths were originally oral, told across regions, shaped by local identity and imperial politics. Different versions can exist at the same time, and that's not a problem. It's a feature. Viracocha isn't a single frozen character. He's a powerful idea that traveled across the Andes, changing shape while keeping the same heartbeat. Creation, order, and the test of how humans live. Viracocha's modern echo. Even today, Viracocha hasn't fully left. His name appears in art, in tourism, in modern retellings, sometimes simplified, sometimes romanticized, sometimes used as a symbol of ancient wisdom. And maybe that's exactly what myths do. They don't survive because every detail stays the same. They survive because the core meaning stays useful. Viracocha's meaning is still sharp. The world can be built, then broken. Power can walk among you, unrecognized. And balance is not guaranteed. It has to be maintained. Final thoughts. So, Viracocha remains one of the most striking figures in Inca mythology. A creator who forms the world from darkness. A judge who resets creation when it collapses into chaos. A wanderer who walks among people in disguise. And a god who leaves, not in defeat, but in completion. And that final image stays with you. A lone figure walking toward the horizon as if reminding humanity, the world is yours now. What will you do with it? If you enjoyed this journey into Inca mythology, tell me in the comments. What part of Viracocha's legend hit you the hardest? The creation, the flood, or the idea of a god who tests humans as a stranger? And if you want more from the Andes, the next story to explore is obvious. Inti, the son the Inca built an empire around, and how his power compares to the creator who came before him.